exhilarating, challenging. Most of it has been spent on putting together the most dynamic and effective staff that we possibly can. And I think that's been a successful venture thus far. Not quite complete. We're still working on a first base coach. Those interviews are happening in the last couple of days and have kept us all up a little bit later than we expected, but everything's been going really well. Thanks for asking.
How many players on the roster you got?
So I've had some in-person meetings, somewhere between north of 6 and south of 9. Don't know the exact number. I have had a handful of conversations on the phone, and I've at least touched base either via WhatsApp with some of our Spanish speakers or text message with a lot of our American players. So I've touched everybody and had varying degrees of connection so far.
And you went down to Dominican recently?
Went down to the Dominican, stopped in Miami. In Miami, I got a chance to meet with Cesar Hernandez and Odubel Herrera and some of his family. And then I got to go down to the DR and spend some time with Franco and Neris and Garcia. And got a chance also to witness Franco on the field, taking some batting practice and working on his stroke, which looks really, really good, making some adjustments down there. And his effort level looks like it should look. So really exciting stuff happening there.
Why was it important to go down to Miami and the Dominican specifically, I guess?
It was specifically important to go down to Miami and the Dominican because most of what I'm setting out to accomplish is building connections and relationships with all of our players, and like independent of what part of the world they come from, it takes some effort to go spend that time and make those deeper connections. Because at some point, those connections are going to be important. And it's right around the corner. Spring training starts very, very soon. I wish it was starting tomorrow, but when spring training rolls around, I already want those connections established and relationships in place.
Yeah, what exactly is the change that Frank was making with his stroke, and who initiated that?
So he's working down there with our Latin American field coordinator, but I think if you really want to get down to who initiates a change in a player's stroke, it's always the player. And in this particular case, I think Franco deserves all the credit for wanting to improve on his performance last year. I think there's a ton of room for growth, both on defense and with the bat, and I think that's something that he would share as well. Very dynamic player with a tremendous ceiling, and he's in the process of working towards tapping his potential.
In the weeks since you've been hired, is there anything you've been doing to, I guess, learn about what these guys have been doing on the field the last couple seasons? Like, have you been watching video of any of these guys, or what have you been doing to kind of see where they are at this point in their careers?
I think the best way for me to find out how, what our players are up to is by asking them. Additionally, asking some of our great player development staff about what they've worked on in the past with these players. I've spent quite a bit of time looking at video and finally, spending time on some numbers, which I really enjoy. I've always liked digging into what makes a player good at his job and really focusing on the positives, right? So I think traditionally in player development, traditionally Major League staff look to find out what players are doing wrong. And I think there's a whole lot of room for us to look at some of the things that they do very, very well. Point out those things to our players, identify them with a lot of conviction so that they feel like we're behind them. So I think if I've been doing nothing else, it's been trying to dig into what our players do very, very well.
Best piece of advice you've gotten since you got the job, and who gave that to you?
I would say this morning I had some really meaningful conversation with Pat Gillick. He walked me through his view of Lou Piniella, his view of Charlie Manuel, who he spoke incredibly highly of. He talked about Cito a little bit and how those three managers touch their players every single day and went out of their way to establish connections in very different ways. But how effective Charlie's approach was and his easygoing demeanor. Talked a little bit about how Lou would walk around the field every single day during batting practice and touch his players and make a connection. Obviously, Lou did it in a pretty intense way. But it was nice to see, it was nice to have Pat walk through, obviously seen everything in the game, and have him walk through his experience with those managers.
Joe Maddon was talking today about how he's been talking to you on the phone and seen you, and you mentioned, you watched what he did when you were playing for him. Did he give you any advice, or what are those kind of conversations been like?
It's really interesting, and this is very similar to the way it was when I played for Joe. It was less about what he was saying and much more about the energy that he conveyed, which is, you belong, you're going to be good at this, and trust yourself. And one of the things he said is which will always stay with me, is don't be afraid to be different. And obviously I need to hear that from a guy like Joe, who sort of has historically dared to be different and very comfortable being different, and has been extraordinarily successful being different. So it's not just the words that Joe says. It's the support that he gives you through the way he looks at you, the way he touches you. He's a pretty powerful individual.
Where will Gabe Kapler be different? How will Gabe Kapler?
You know what? This is another extraordinary conversation I had today with Joe Torre. I had a one-on-one conversation with Joe, and Joe talked about caring, and Joe's vulnerable, and shared that that's a really good thing. I think that'll be an area that I might be a little bit different, is just exposing some vulnerability. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to lean on the expertise of our staff. We're putting together a staff that with a lot of diversity of thought, and I'm going to lean on those varying degrees of experience and different ways of looking at and solving problems. And Joe talked about not being afraid to lean on those guys.
I don't know how much you've analyzed the roster. What do you think the team's greatest need is right now?
I think the team's greatest need is to have everybody develop just a little bit from where they were last year. So we have this really exciting core of young players in their mid-20s who, in many ways are establishing themselves as major league players. And we saw some pretty significant steps forward in the second half. If we see those guys taking those steps forward like they did in the second half, plus one tick up in development, I think we're looking at a pretty healthy opening day roster. When I say healthy, I don't mean like healthy on the field, but strong and capable. And I think what's very cool is we have a lot of flexibility to move our infield pieces around, by way of example. I think there's a lot of exciting things to point to.
You wrote a blog post in 2015 about rules and not being a fan of rules, believing that a player would be better without rules. What does the baseball team going to look like without rules, and how would you implement that in spring training?
Sure. So not having rules doesn't mean not having expectations. Not having rules doesn't mean not demonstrating to a player where he needs to improve. So, by way of example, if you don't have a rule about facial hair, and a man comes to the ballpark and his facial hair is down to his belly button, we might just say, hey, this is how this looks to your teammates. There's no rule against not having a beard down to your belly button, but I just want to hold up an accurate mirror for you. Society passes judgment, whether we like it or not. So it's almost like every decision that you make in a Major League Baseball clubhouse has repercussions. And so one of the ways that you sort of police it is by challenging, and when people aren't living up to expectations, sharing that there's no rule against what you just did. However, there is a consequence for the action. And here's what it is, and it's not always the same. It's not always that you pull a guy out of the game. It might be that he might lose his teammate in the locker next to him. His teammate might have less confidence in him because of that decision. So it's interesting. With the Dodgers in player development, where I was coming from, we didn't have any rules. And what we found is very rarely did players break the traditional rules. You talked to him, the guy didn't show up on time. We had that conversation with everybody, knew that it wasn't acceptable. You actually don't have to post a list of rules on the wall for there to be a philosophical agreement that we have expectations.
Gabe, you mentioned the cooler. Assuming nothing happens this offseason with moves, how do you see the middle infield playing out? Going before rotating. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I see it as a huge advantage. I see, let's say we have Caesar and JP and Freddie and Franco. I think it's an advantage to those guys because we're going to have a unique opportunity to put them in positions to succeed by matching them up effectively. We're circling back to Joe Maddon. I think one of the things he's done really, really well with the Cubs is used all of his players, and given them blows effectively to keep them healthy. But also at the end of the year, their numbers are stronger. They perform better because they were matched up more efficiently and more effectively. So I actually see it as a win-win-win. Win for the Phillies because we have the best lineup on the field most of the time. A win for the players because they end up putting up better numbers at the end of the year. And just like a win for all of us collectively. So I see it as, from my perspective, I think it's good for all of us. See, it still turns out to be playing regularly. Well, it may not be, and again, like, no absolutes here, it may not be 162. This is really regular playing time. It's just moving around a little bit and getting an effective blow. And I don't think it's a difficult sell to a player when you can sit them down and say, here's how it's been done with the Cubs, and here's how it was done with the Dodgers, and here's what these players accomplished at the end of the year. And it's not just a team goal of going to the playoffs or winning a World Series. It's the individual goals and how some of those like on-base percentage numbers improve, how guys stay healthier over the course of time because they're not worn down. I just don't see that as being a difficult sell. I see that as being a pretty effective and direct sell.
Are you planning to, there was a lot of talk when you were with the Dodgers, implementing nutrition and all that stuff. Is that something that you're planning to do, as manager and implement those same philosophies and strategies, I guess?
I would say that the philosophy and the strategy is educate, educate, educate. Present our players with the best possible options, the most nutrient-dense options, and then say, here are how these nutrients work in your body and how they have a chance to make you a more effective baseball player. Now go choose. You're grown-ups. And I think that's one of the things, sort of talking through the rules concept. Grown-ups don't like to be, in my opinion, grown-ups don't like to be told what to do. They like to be given choices and trusted to make sensible ones. That doesn't always play out the way you expect it to, but I think through like a relentless approach of educating, you get there over the course of time.
Physically, players are better athletes than ever before. With all the information available, do you think they're actually mentally better than ever before? Do they understand the game better?
I do, because I believe in the concept of, as we acquire more information and as our bodies, as human beings, as we evolve, I think we do become bigger, faster, stronger, more intelligent. And there's more information out there, and if we're effective at delivering that information, if we do it in bite-sized chunks and we share it with a lot of conviction. Look, some degree of coaching is sales, and if we sell the information well and market it well, I do think mentally players become stronger. They become better equipped to manage their matchups, by way of example. They're more confident in convicted in delivering a pitch or taking a pitch, as an example as well.
Do you see your bullpen pieces as interchangeable, as opposed to pitchers fitting into this is my seventh inning guy, this is my eighth inning guy, this is my closer?
Right. So right now, I still want to get to spring training and watch these guys in person. So it's undoubtedly true that I believe that a bullpen and a roster and a lineup works best when players are feeling like flexibility is the way to go. So rather than I am the 3-hole hitter and I am the left fielder, they think of themselves as a baseball player that can move around the diamond and move around the lineup. Because, again, that gives us the best chance to match them up and put them in the best position to succeed, and it gives the Phillies the best chance to win a world championship. So a lot of this has to do with me getting to know the players a little bit better and the roster and learning as much as I can about the strengths and weaknesses of our players. And some of that is just going to be getting to know them in spring training. But the mindset can and will be one of flexibility, and I am not married to any specific role, because that isn't mental toughness. If I can only do one thing, that's not a very mentally tough way to start.
Is that a part of the pitch to maybe prospective free agents and whatnot, like letting them know if you come here, you might have done it this way in your career, this previous team or whatever, but this might be a little bit different.
I think the pitch to free agents, and actually the pitch to our own players, is we're going to put you in the best possible position to succeed. You, and yes, the Phillies 100%, but just as importantly, you. You are going to be healthier. We are going to match you up better, so your numbers look stronger, and theoretically, you put more money away, which is an ambition of a lot of the players, certainly on the free agent market. But the guys that we're going to have in our clubhouse are going to want to make dough. And so that's why it's kind of cool. It's unique. You're gonna make more money theoretically. We're gonna win more baseball games theoretically. Your numbers are gonna be better theoretically.
This is going to be an important year for Franco in terms of his future with the organization. He's one of the few guys that are going to be having his third hitting coach in 3 years. As a guy that's played for multiple teams and coaches, I guess, what are the challenges for a guy that's had so much change, as a young player and as you try and get this guy on track?
Well, I think the challenges are, keeping himself as strong as he possibly can. And this goes for Franco, but it goes for all of our players. Keeping themselves as strong as they possibly can physically. There's nothing more critical, there's nothing more consequential than our health. And if we are healthy, that means our hips are flexible, our ankles are flexible, we're able to execute the swing that we want to get off. So I think that's a challenge for all of our players. Look, there's no question that there are some mechanical changes that our players can and will make under our staff as well. I think John Maley has a pretty strong track record of impacting hitters, just by way of example, both mechanically and from an approach perspective. He did a pretty good job with some of those young Cubs hitters. I think our players like Franco are going to be in really good hands.
Gabe, it wasn't that long ago that you were a player. When you decided that strategy was what you wanted to follow, what were some of the areas you decided to hone in? Is it player evaluation? Is it analytics? Is it player relation? And what are those aspects you think really won the Phillies over?
I would say that the area that I'm most passionate about is environment building. It's about culture building. So I don't think we think about it as like let's win a World Series title in 17-18. It's how do we get to a 10-year stretch of excellence, and how do we, in that 10-year stretch of excellence, also create an environment where our players love coming to the ballpark to work every single day, and where our staff feels like they're not stepping on each other's toes and they don't have to push each other out of each other's lanes. Rather, they're inviting each other in to help make really good decisions together. So it's an environment builder. We want to create an environment that encourages our players to grow. The analogy that I've used and will continue to use is the coaching staff, the front office, all of the various departments around a baseball organization are the soil, and our players are the plants and the trees that are going to grow in that soil. So that soil has to be extremely nutrient dense. So as I think about managing a ball club, I think about being really nutrient dense soil. Does that answer that question directly?
Sort of. I guess you addressed kind of like a more general term of what you like to set up. But as you finish your career, were there areas where you thought, okay, I need to learn more about this? or one day it can become a matter? Was it the, what were the things that were going to be part of that transition to becoming a manager? Was it player relations? Was it...
I would say it's everything across the board. And look, I'm not by any stretch trying to not answer the question directly. I just think there's tons to learn. Like, sure, I mean, I wanted to know what advanced metrics would help be most predictive. Yes, I wanted to sap up all the experience about how to teach a guy to be in a good athletic position when he fields a ground ball. Of course, I wanted to learn how, from an offensive perspective, how to get the bat in the zone and keep it in the zone a really long time. I wanted to learn how the best managers relate to their players, and I want to be open-minded enough to listen to a field staff. I don't think there was the one thing, if that's more helpful. I think it was everything. I want to just soak up all of the information.
And of your experience you've had dealing with player development in the last year, how do you see that apply to what you're...
So, player development so Joe Jordan is our farm director here with the Phillies. He's sensational. I think Joe would tell you that leading that big of a group of people, so 250 players plus so many field staff, and you have to manage up and down. So your farm director, your boss is the general manager, but you're also dealing with your field coordinator, that's sort of your field general. There's players all the way from the Dominican Republic all the way to the major leagues, and your phone is blowing up all the time. So you're getting text messages from these guys day and night, and it could be something as simple as my grandmother passed away, and dealing with that effectively, to something much more baseball driven, like something with their swing that they're working on. So the way that's applicable to a dugout is it's leadership. You have to lead a big group of people and be available to and selfless and not think about yourself at all and always be thinking about the players. So I think that's the farm director position is perfectly analogous with the major league manager in that regard.
There's some low-key, laid-back kind of personalities on the team. You're an intense guy. As you've started to kind of get to know some of the players, what do you see as some of the challenges in connecting with some of those guys who, are good clubhouse guys, but might just not be able to match that intensity level?
I'd say, the baseball clubhouse is very much an extension of society. So there's all sorts of personalities, and we reach each other in all kinds of different ways. And look, I might not be able to reach every player, but that's why you build a really dynamic staff. You lean on the guys standing next to you. Like maybe it's Rob Thompson who has the best connection with a couple of guys. And maybe we develop roadmaps together on how to have effective conversations with somebody who's a little more laid back and not, won't respond to my level of intensity. Or maybe, maybe I have to make an adjustment. And so instead of coming into a conversation with a whole bunch of intensity, I come into a conversation with a much more calm, easy demeanor. It's sort of how we navigate society. Like you read somebody, you look in somebody's eyes, and you change your approach based on their personality. The opposite never works, which is expecting them to adjust to you.
Hanukkah starts in about 35 minutes.
Does it? 35?
What's at the top of your wish list?
It's top of my Hanukkah wish list.
As it pertains to with winter meetings, as you embark on this journey, baseball-wise, what's the top of your Hanukkah wish list?
Sleep? No. I just think I've gotten such a tremendous level of support from the community, the fans in Philadelphia, from our front office, from the various departments in the Phillies organization. If I could just have continued support, that would be a pretty awesome gift, independent of the holiday.
Okay, Gabe, you mentioned Charlie Manuel, and you and he had sort of different spectrum of success in Japan.
You mean he had success and I didn't?
You can take it any way you want, but you had that fine spring, and everything was very positive. What did you take away from that experience in Japan? And another question is, did it inform your perspective and your philosophy on rules with that team?
Sure. I'll answer the first question first. I learned, first of all, that I love the culture in Japan, and I had an incredible experience off the field. I just happened to perform really poorly on the field and not be super healthy. But I did feel like I got a tremendous level of support. And if I could go back and do that all different, I would not have had 1 foot in the United States and 1 foot in Japan, which I think was something that I wish I could do again. I would have given all of my effort and attention to being the best baseball player in Japan that I could have been. In my mind, I was thinking about performing well for a year or 2 in Japan, and then coming back and performing in the United States, instead of being really present and really taking advantages of the gifts that I was given by the Yomiuri Giants, who treated me like gold.